Good morning, everyone. I said good morning, everyone. Good morning. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Amanda Rodriguez-Smith, and I'm the Senior Development Officer of Equity Initiatives and Partnerships with the Mayor's Office of Small, Minority, and Women-Owned Business. We're very excited to have you all here. So first, give yourselves a round of applause for making it out today. Morning Masters, we want to welcome you. This is actually the first of our series of talks that not only touch on important issues facing entrepreneurs, but the ways that entrepreneurs impact our society at large. It's our way to build a deeper bond and relationships with you as businesses operating within the communities that we serve. And who better to lead that discussion than our Chief Entrepreneur in Office, our Madam Mayor Pugh. Our great mayor believes that through collaboration and by seeing the intersectionality of our relationships to one another, we can build more prosperous futures for all of the residents in Baltimore. I think that deserves a round of applause as well. And I'd also like to acknowledge the hard work often being led in Yeoman's World, our Director of Small, Minority, and Women-Owned Business, who many of you know through the years, Paul Taylor. So get ready. Today you are going to learn, discover, and hopefully get connected to the many great resources that our office has to share with you. And again, I want to thank everyone for bearing the rain to take part in a really meaningful experience. So please enjoy the conversation. Our first panel is going to address total health, building prosperous communities from the inside out. We have guests who have traveled near and far to impart their information and life experiences with us. And I would like to invite them at this time to join us at the carpet. Of course, Madam Mayor, representing the City of Baltimore, Shanti Das, representing a great initiative called Silence the Shame, Kristen Rakowski, Baltimore City Health Department, who you will hear from shortly, and Audrey Johnson, our moderator from Kaiser Permanente.
Economic Opportunity Impact Initiative. So I'm happy to be here this morning and have this opportunity.
Great. So I believe we're going to have a conversation, and hopefully you all will get to ask some questions. But one of the reasons that it's important to do this is because there are a lot of initiatives going on in the city of Baltimore. But more importantly, how we lift our businesses and our communities is essential. But it's hard to talk about healthy businesses without talking about the health of a city in general. And so when we think about the health of Baltimore, we realize that 30% of the population makes under 25,000. There are all kinds of health disparities that exist in our communities, and how we meet those needs, whether it is through city government or whether it is through our collaborations with the private and public sector, are part of the discussions that I hope we have today. But the reality is that we know that we can grow small business in this city. But my hope is that we get beyond being small businesses, that in our collaborations and in our integration and interactions, that we also cooperate and form partnerships that can allow us to grow to even larger businesses. But again, addressing the health issues in our communities, and we look at it individually, but we should also look at it from the perspective of how do we take our businesses as well to address some of those issues.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Shanti Das. I am the founder of the Hip Hop Professional Foundation and the Silence the Shame movement. I am a 25-year plus entertainment industry veteran, and so it was quite an honor to see TLC perform last night at Artscape, because I had the good fortune of doing a lot of their marketing and promotions for over 10 years when they first started their career. So it's been a real honor to be here. I want to thank Mayor Pugh and Amanda for supporting Silence the Shame. May 5th is actually National Silence the Shame Day now. And we received a proclamation from the city of Baltimore, and it really brought me to tears to see that our movement is spreading. A lot of our work is done in the Atlanta area, but we've started a national movement. And it started from pain, and I've turned it into passion, and we'll get into that a little bit more later. But I'm just grateful to see that people like Mayor Pugh is really looking at mental health and addressing our community and the needs that exist. Thank you. So to get us started, I'm just going to share a few remarks. We know right now that it's Mental Health Awareness, and in recent weeks, due to many public crises that's been experienced by celebrities and some public figures, such as Erica Campbell, you guys all familiar with Mary, I think recently shared the loss of a baby and attempting suicide. Gabrielle Union, I think, shared with Dr. Oz what she's experienced around her miscarriages. And then you have Michelle Williams from Destiny's Child, who just recently checked herself into a mental health center. So there's a lot of stress associated with being the boss, right? Or even simply being at the top of your game. The way that business leaders and leaders in general manage stress can have huge impacts well beyond our personal lives. It unintentionally will impact the communities that we live in and serve, because the role of these individuals play a part in our society. Stress is not only an issue of leaders, it's a part of the human experience. So we all, tend to experience it. As such, we're constantly trying to find the calm within the chaos. And usually within communities of color, we don't stop to address them until there is a crisis. So the goal of our conversation this morning is to share and learn from each other about understanding the resilience and the proactively thinking about remedies to the trauma and the stress that is inevitable in our lives. And for many entrepreneurs, today we are joined by our Madam Mayor, Shanti, who introduced themselves, and also later we'll bring Kristen Rizkowski into the conversation. And we'll discuss how mental health impacts our growth and prosperity at large. So I want to start with Madam Mayor to kick this off. July is Mental Health Awareness Month. In what ways has the city been supportive in addressing mental and emotional wellness?
So let me begin first of all by saying that mental health really does permeate our communities, and oftentimes even in the workplace we don't really want to deal with it. I think about oftentimes when someone is having a difficult time or a difficult day, rather than to have a conversation as to why that difficult day is occurring, somebody automatically will look at you and say, you know what, you don't belong here. Perhaps you need to be fired. And I've witnessed it actually as the mayor of the city, watching how different people function and operate in their positions. And what they don't even realize, many of them, is that we have a responsibility as employers to address those issues, rather than to see something and say, well, this person doesn't belong here. What we have is employment services, which require you, if you feel that someone has an emotional issue, you should, instead of recommending that they be fired, recommend that they seek therapy and provide that for them. And I've seen it time and time again, just in my short 18 months of being mayor. I've seen people fire other people. I've seen people react in a way that you want to say to them, did you check yourself? And perhaps you also need to take a mental look at your own capacity. Mental illness is something that I think that all of us could identify someone in our family that is suffering, whether it's from bipolarism, a miscarriage, a breakup in a relationship, a difficult day that didn't get addressed, the treatment by a boss, and not knowing who to turn to or how to address it can spiral into a situation where you can find yourself unemployed. And then you may, and I never forget, I heard someone say, I'm in the process of losing my house, I lost my job, I can't pay for my child's education. And we look at people like, you have a job and you have a responsibility and you're supposed to just be able to perform that every day, as if other things don't intervene and have an impact on your life. So one of the things that I'm in the process of doing with all of my staff is getting them to understand that they too have a responsibility, and especially those who are in, as someone would say, have responsibility to manage people. Check yourself first. Check yourself first. And then, if you need a mental health break, take a mental health break. You would be surprised at how many people are not only suffering from a mental breakdown, but also maybe dealing with a drug addiction issue. And drug addiction is permeating our communities and our society, and how we deal with that in the workplace is important. And so for me, it is important for me to not only take my own mental health breaks, because people say, do you ever sleep? No. But I do get up in the morning, and running is actually my therapy. I get up and people say, well, can I run with you? No. I don't want to have a conversation with you early in the morning. Running is my way of clearing my head, to make sure that when I enter the day, I tell people, folks can be yelling and screaming, and it just brings me down. And so I think we all have to do a mental check of ourselves, and then find what is it that helps us to take a 360-degree look at who we are, how we respond, and how we react to other individuals. My mother used to say this to me. When somebody is yelling at you, you say, somebody's at the top of their voice, go low. Go low. And people say, what are you saying? I said, I'm talking really soft so that you can hear how loud you are. And all of a sudden, they're shaken because they realize that their tone is above and beyond. I used to say this even in a relationship. If someone talked to me above the normal tone, I'm like, check this out. Because see, my parents taught me that nobody has to talk to me outside of their normal tone. Mm-hmm. And when you reach above the normal tone, then something is wrong here. And nothing in our conversation should allow you to think that it's okay to raise your voice. Because when you do that, the next thing you know, you raise your hand. That's a problem.
Yes, thank you, thank you. Thank you for addressing sort of the work dynamics and the environment in terms of addressing mental health and emotional wellness. What role does or can the health community have in shaping healthier neighborhoods in Baltimore for the residents?
So for me, it really is understanding the city and the complexities of the city. Like I said earlier, 30% of our population makes under $25,000. And you all pass those corners and you can see the drug addiction on the corner. You can see homelessness. And the question becomes, I think the first thing we should put in front of our heads is that only by the grace of God it could be any of us. Right. See others as you see yourself in others. What would you want for yourself if you were sleeping on the streets of the city? What would you want? We created a stabilization center for people who have drug addiction issues. And someone said, why are you doing that? Because they deserve to be stabilized and then provided services. And the initial stabilization center was actually planned to be right on Pennsylvania and North Avenue. And I was just newly elected as mayor, and I said, absolutely not. You cannot do a stabilization center in the middle of chaos. We're already in a chaotic environment that we're trying to work with. We've got methadone clinic on one corner, you've got folks standing on the other, and what other folks don't realize is that you've got a senior building and a CVS building right next to each other. I remember doing Freddie Gregg, being out on the streets every single day, and my main concern were the seniors who were living in that senior building. And every day I would make sure that we provided them with food and took care of them. But the city has a responsibility, and that's why I'm really grateful, and you'll hear from the health department of all of the ways that we're dealing with drug addiction, that we're dealing with mental illness, and that the way that we are dealing with the issues that parents sometimes don't get to be able to challenge because of their own income. And one of them is the glasses for young people. You'd be surprised how many young people get labeled because they can't see. They're sitting in the classroom and they can't see. Parents haven't checked their eyes. Parents can't afford to take off from work. And so here you have a child sit in the classroom who can't see, can't learn how to read, And the first time they get a pair of glasses, all of a sudden, the world wakes up to them. And so we have a responsibility to address all those issues, and we are through the health department. And be more healthy babies. I tell folks there's nothing more important than how we invest in our young people. And that's why I believe so strongly in Judy Centers, because they start educating our children at 6 weeks of age. But unhealthy pregnancies in the city have gone far too long, and that's why the health department jumped in with Be More Healthy Babies, and we've seen the outcomes better over the years. But the total mental health of our community, it's like homelessness. When you think about the number of people who are living on the streets of our city, mental illness lays at the bottom of all of that. And so it's not about providing shelters where people can come in and go out. You got to think about the mental pressure you put on someone when you said you can come into a shelter, but you got to pack up your bags, and then you got to leave, and then you got to come back and fight for your bed. Something's wrong with that picture. And so for us, it's about building homes for the homeless and providing the services, mental health included, drug addiction, job training, all of those things, and the access to jobs. So it becomes a totality of the community, how we wrap our arms around people in our city and provide them with the services. And that's why the connection with the hospitals are very important, and the emergency rooms and the outpatient centers and the mental health facilities to provide treatment for people in our neighborhoods and communities.
Great, thank you. So Shanti,
Yes.
tell us about your Silence of Shame initiative and how it's become a national movement in the past year.
Okay, so Silence to Shame is a movement, like I mentioned, under my Hip Hop Professional Foundation. The goal and mission of the movement is to peel back the layers of shame and stigma around mental health and wellness, basically so folks won't be embarrassed to talk about it. I mean, how many of us have that Uncle Pete, like on Soul Food, when you thought something was wrong with Uncle Pete, but no one would talk about it, and you would just take him that dinner, during the cookout, and leave him in the back room, or leave your aunt in the back room. And so in 2015, it's actually when Bobby Christina first took ill, and a lot of people weren't sure if she had possibly attempted to take her own life. So one of the radio stations in Atlanta, Georgia called me up to the station to do an interview. And my father completed suicide when I was 7 months old, and so they thought that I would be able to come up and share some information about it. And so Silence to Shame, the name kind of rolled off of my tongue, and I was experiencing some depression, and I just started talking about it on social media. And I was really scared at first, but to see the reaction of people, whether it was a phone call or a text or leaving comments, I felt like people really needed to talk. It was almost like a sigh of relief for people to see someone like myself, and I say it in the most humble way of having a background in entertainment, working with a lot of celebrities, and that doesn't make me any better than anyone, but I wanted to show people I was human. Just because I worked in the music industry didn't mean anything, and because I had this great life in the entertainment industry, I'm still human. And I was suffering as a result of it, and I wasn't afraid to open up and share anymore. And so I did reach back into my Rolodex of contacts in entertainment, and Nick Cannon came on board as our first influencer and ambassador. And he did like a little video. I utilized a lot of the marketing I did with TLC and Outkast. I said, hey, I'm just gonna apply it to mental health. So I started this grassroots movement, and so we're up to 9,000 followers on Instagram, which is a lot for a mental health movement. But more importantly, we've been in the community doing the work. Guys, we don't even really have funding yet. I'll be honest, I got $5,000 in my foundation account. But I put so much of my own money into this movement, and that's how passionate we are about it. We partnered with Jack and Jill of America Incorporated. We did a 7-city teen mental health tour. We've done work with the NFL. Next month, the NBA is flying me in. We're in the communities, after schools, having these panel discussions with licensed healthcare professionals, everyday people, and also, again, bringing celebrities into the fold. We just shot our first webisode on teen depression, and so we're looking to build out curriculums that we can take into the high schools and elementary schools as well as colleges. I'm releasing, some more content later this year around trauma in the community, because what people don't realize is that when these kids see their loved ones or best friends get shot right in front of them, they're going to experience trauma in the future. That's PTSD. But a lot of people don't want to call it that. Or they say, oh, the kids are just acting out and they're bad. And I'm not condoning violence, but let's get to the root of the problem. And what's really going on and how are we addressing the mental health of our community? And so we have a podcast also on iTunes, Google Play, and SoundCloud that may be a helpful resource for you all. So we're really, trying to do as much as we can to amplify the message of good mental health and wellness.
Okay.
So it is important, especially for our young people, which is why now what we started in our schools, our counselors in our schools, oftentimes what you'll see is in rural areas. If a mass shooting takes place, all of a sudden the mental health community, the hospitals, everybody's wrapped around, they're running into the schools and they're providing services for young people. But the reality is, and this conversation came out at the U.S. Conference of Mayors, what cities are doing, how are you addressing urban violence in your own communities? What conversations are you having with the young people who go to your schools so that conversation doesn't, so that the activity doesn't become numb to them? For example, when I think about the 7-year-old who was shot and then passed away recently, Taylor. And I had to call up one of our local television stations to say, I need you to revisit your editorial. Because the streets of the city can be violent, but everybody has a role and responsibility. If Black lives matter, Black lives have to matter to Black people. In our city, over 90% of the shootings and killings that take place in our communities are Black on Black crime. A 7-year-old is in the car with an individual shooting from one car to the next. We endanger the lives of our children. Now that parent didn't expect that to happen. She wasn't in the car. She didn't expect the person that she entrusted her child with to have that happen. But we all have a responsibility because this is a life cut short too soon. Behavior is learned. Parents have a responsibility. Schools have a responsibility. I know we all remember when churches were in our neighborhoods, in our communities, 7 days a week, and everybody took responsibility. And that's why I think, the silence movement, silence the shame movement is important, because we have to have conversations. And so we're now having conversations with our young people around violence, because they should not get used to hearing about gunshots. The media now amplifies that conversation. I could say to you all day long that violence is trending down in our cities, down 20% in almost every single category. But that doesn't impact or negate the shooting of someone in your communities or someone in your neighborhood. It's a problem. Too many illegal guns on our streets, too many people getting shot, and too much mental illness perpetuating that kind of behavior. And then, let's place on top of that, lead paint poisoned children who have now risen to adulthood, who didn't receive treatment, and every study will tell you that it impacts the brain and brain development. So you have this generation of folks who are out there who had no therapy, no intervention, the silence is still there, the conversations aren't being had, and they're suffering. So while we must look at the whole complexities of mental illness, the question becomes, how are we servicing from the least, from the smallest, the youngest, to the workplace? How are we interacting and who's intervening? And that's why our hospital systems are important. Well, that's why everybody has a responsibility. I mean, parents today are burdened by, just wanting to make sure when they send their child to school that they're going to come back home safe. People in neighborhoods want to be able to walk the streets and come back safe. And even the mental treatment and the mental therapy and the therapy for police officers and those that we trust to take care of our neighborhoods and communities. What psychological evaluations are being given to them? Because you take a psychological test when you become a police officer, but how often is there a checkup from the feet up?
So that's a good segue to our next question for Shanti. I want you to tell us about your journey. How did, being in the entertainment industry and now being more focused on mission, mental health, how did you get there?
So as I mentioned earlier, my father completed suicide when I was 7 months old. We didn't talk about it, we didn't go to counseling. My dad was actually from India, my mom's African American, so of course I grew up in African American culture. And we just didn't talk about it. And my sister ended up going to counseling and therapy on her own. She was in college. She's 9 years older than me. My brother is 6 years older. And so for a long time, I was mad at my mom. Not necessarily mad at her, but mad when she would bring my dad's name up, because she would always say, oh, your dad loves you. And I couldn't understand, if he loved me, how could he take his own life? So that was me talking as a child. Fast forward, I think I buried a lot of those feelings and just became this really super successful kid, wanted to kind of overachieve in high school and college, and started working in the entertainment industry. And that was a really high stress job. In 2001, I moved to New York City, and I remember having a new boss, and he was constantly yelling, constantly being condescending, and it was very difficult for me. And I had already experienced 10 years of success in the entertainment industry, but it didn't really matter. It was my first time experiencing adversity in the workplace, and I started getting depressed. I was anxious, and that was the first time I ever uttered the words, I think I'm just going to kill myself. I had moved to New York. I sold my home in Atlanta. I didn't really have a place to go back to, and I didn't understand how to cope with those emotions and those feelings. And I always was afraid in the back of my head that when the going got tough, that I would contemplate suicide, because if my dad did it, then in my mind it was okay. So fast forward, I did go to counseling and got some help then. I forgave my father for the first time when I was 33 years old. I'm 47 now. My age, but it's okay. I'm proud of being 47. So in 2009, I was at the height of my career. I was executive vice president of Universal Motown in New York City, making a great salary, corner office, Range Rover, all that stuff that we think matters, think matters in life, right? All the things. So my mother developed Alzheimer's, and she was in Charlotte, and I was a little upset that I wasn't able to be there with her, and I didn't want all the pressure on my sister, so I started getting stressed out again. So I quit my job, walked away, moved back home to Atlanta, started doing a lot of community service work. God was doing something in my mind, in my life. I didn't understand what it was, and so being an entrepreneur for the last 8.5 years has been really tough for me. You walking away from a $400,000 a year job to figuring it out on your own. It's tough when you're not getting that check every month or every 2 weeks, right? So the ups and downs and financial hardships, and then just me unpacking those layers, I finally started dealing with my father and suicide and my own emotional health and wellness. So 4 years ago, my best friend, I was headed on vacation, and I called her, or she called me rather, right before I was about to board the plane, and told me that she was having the worst day of her life. And I was going overseas on a trip, so I waited to be the last person to board the plane and was talking to her about what was going on. Long story short, I landed 12 hours later and got a phone call that she had shot herself. It's still hard for me to talk about to this day, but I blame myself a lot. So the grief with my friend's suicide, and she did it the same way that my dad did, it almost took me out. And so that was in 2014. So in 2015, even when the Silence of Shame name came about, I still was trying to figure out my life, trying to figure out entrepreneurship and what God really wanted me to do. And I was afraid to become a poster child for mental health. So I had a lot of internal frustrations and struggles going on in my mind. And all this time, I still really wasn't going to therapy, which was not good for me at all. And I wasn't even seeing a psychiatrist to see if I needed medication. So in 2015, I hit rock bottom. I didn't want to get out of bed. I didn't want to open the blinds. I stopped really hanging out with friends. You talk about substance abuse, because you can't talk about mental illness and not talk about substance abuse. They go hand in hand, and I'm sure we'll get to that later. But you know, that one drink that you might have, that when you get home after a long day, well, one turned into 3, and 3 turned into 4. But guess what? It was a party at once. Nobody else is at my home. So that's a problem when you're having it. So the drinking made me more depressed. And in September of 2015, I planned out my own funeral. I figured out how it would affect my family. I didn't want to do this to my sister and brother again, but I just wanted the pain to stop. I was crying all the time, and I was going to church. I'm a member of Ebenezer, but I can remember going every Sunday and just crying the entire service because I just could not stop the downward spirals and thoughts in my head, and I was going through a severe depression. And so I had gotten out of the house, but I had looked through my medicine cabinet and decided what pills I was going to take. I thought God was done with my life here and my work, and so I know we got to move on, but it was the hardest thing that I've ever done in my life. But by grace of God, I'm here today in front of you. I told my sister encouraged me to call the suicide prevention hotline, which I did, and my pastor, by the way, I know Mayor Pugh mentioned churches and the importance of our churches in our community. You know, oftentimes in the Black church, we're taught to pray our problems away, and I'm a big proponent of prayer, and I have a wonderful relationship with God, but God also gave people the ability to become doctors and therapists and so forth. So sometimes prayer and therapy is great. For me, I did both. And so that's kind of how things happen. And so now this is my life mission and ministry. It's not a fad. It's not something that I'm not going to be doing 10 years from today. I am here to hopefully change the face of mental health in communities of color.
Thank you. I'm glad you were here. I think part of the desire of today's conversation is to be really transparent. And so I'm going to go a little deeper and ask our mayor, you know, we go to events like this all the time, and they can be very transactional, right? And so how do we really attend them and navigate through it where we take away something? And so we have a room full of beautiful women and a few men I see that are, you know, approaching entrepreneurship, are business owners and successful. But I want to ask you, how can you, you know, relate to the trauma that Shanta just shared to us? And I, you know, and in sharing your perspective as an entrepreneur, as a mayor, how has subscribing to a life of mission and not a 9 to 5? Because you already told us you don't sleep.
No, I do sleep regularly. Like,
what has that looked like and felt like for you?
well, let me just say, first of all, I pinch myself that I get to do this job every day.
Yeah.
I mean, I love what I do every single day. Honestly, I feel blessed. I feel chosen for a time such as this. You know, I think it's so important for us to have relationships with others. I mean, a real, true, good friend. Somebody who's honest with you. I always say that when you leave the house, if you're leaving by yourself, at least look in the mirror and do a 360. You know, when you get up in the morning, tell yourself how beautiful you are, you know, because you are. And understand that the power is within. And you must strengthen yourself. And when you feel that you're down and something is bringing you down, you got to reach out. And somebody ought to be there to help you reach out. And if they're not, we have to understand that therapy is real. And you should get professional help. And oftentimes we think we can solve these problems by ourselves, and we can't. And so we have to be willing to be vulnerable, you know, to be honest. Because I think what you were sharing with us, Shantae, what we don't want is to feel that loneliness, that there is no choice. And choosing life is important because life is short. It's short enough. And so we have to choose life. So for me, every day is new. I mean, I've set goals and objectives. I know where I want to take Baltimore. You know, I created a $50 million investment fund so that we can invest in neighborhoods and communities that have been underinvested in for decades. You know, I raised $500,000 because I wanted to go out to neighborhoods and communities and help people who were sitting on corners. You know, you get tired when you ride by, you say, hey, you need a job over there? Guy says, well, where? I said, have you been down to the Department of Public Works? So you know what I decided? You know, I can't just keep asking people. I can't just keep telling you. So why don't I bring mobile units to you so that you can get the opportunity and go and get there. So for me, it's trying to meet people every day where they are. And I'm not above realizing that some things are not within your control. So I'll take the criticism, you know, because everybody has a solution. If you get those solutions every single day, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Let me make sure we connect you. But I have a goal and a mission and a vision. And I'm very focused on where I need to take this city. But the city is its people. And we have all kinds of people. And that's why I say our responsibility in the workplace is to make sure that I have healthy people who are reaching out to other people. And even when they find moments that they need help, that we have therapy sessions that they can go to so that they can be the very best that they can be. I've experienced suicide in my own family, and it is a heart-wrenching thing. But what I was always taught was that you must be strong, and you must always be able to reach out and have conversations with others. My parents encouraged us, and my parents used to say, there were 7 of us, they used to say, you're your best friend. No, you can't spend the night with so-and-so's house. Right here. Only thing they used to say was, God, can y'all sing? You could at least be the Jacksons. But we were, and still are, our best friends. My sisters and brothers are my best friends. And I'll never forget my first boyfriend. You know, one of the things we used to do, our parents, we kissed our parents when we left home, we kissed them when we came back in. When we were talking to them on the phone, we said, bye, love you. So I never forget my first boyfriend. I said, what was that? It had become a habit in my life, to kiss the people that you love when you leave, to say I love you, and when you came back in, you kissed and said I love you. And so as a result, I tell people, can't nobody love me more than I love me. I love you. And so we have to teach each other the beauty of ourselves, to love ourselves like nobody else can. My mother used to say, I love my parents. Yeah. My mother used to say, find somebody that's going to love you like I love you. And my dad used to say, nobody's going to love you like I love you. But love yourself. And self-love is so important so that when you get up in the morning, and I tell you, I get up with joy, even when I'm struggling to get out there at 4:30 in the morning and do that run in the morning. I feel so good about who I am. And we've got to give that to our young people. We've got to give it to our babies. We've got to give it to our neighbors' children. Because you know, the day of a village raises a child, you know, we moved away from that. We're afraid to tell somebody walking down the street with their pants below the waistline, hey, what's going on with that? Right. I used to say to the young men when I would go out early in the morning and they were outside, I said, come on guys, seriously, you think I want to see your drawers early in the morning? Do you understand that that's prison behavior? Do you know you're sending a message? You know, and we got to say to our babies, our young girls, you know, you are beautiful the way you are. I saw a little girl, somebody said, oh, that's the man. She just switched right on by. And I just walked up to her, I said, baby, that's not cute. Why are you doing that? You walk like a lady. And I say it to young girls when they come to the workplace, you know, you can't come in here with a rag on your head. You working in City Hall. Be presentable. But we're afraid. We act like we're afraid of our children. They need us. They need us to be honest with them. And we have a responsibility to be honest with them. And honestly, I try to carry it with me every day. Yeah. Every day, in every way. I want to be an example to my employees. I want to be an example to the men and women and the children of our city. I try to bring that with me every day.
And we see it. Thank you.
So I think that the way
We're running out of a little time. So we heard a lot about our personal, right, our personal health and personal experiences. I mentioned where I am. I work for Kaiser Permanente, and I'm so happy that we partnered with the mayor's office to bring on some activity around economic development. I know there's some entrepreneurs and some businesses in the room that were accepted into the Inner City Capital Connections program. Yes? Yay! We're kicking off next week. We are so excited. Paul and his team and the mayor have been great partners in that work. And so I had a whole lot to go about economic development, but I wanted to touch on it. We're running out of time, but I want to invite Kristen up so we can hear a little bit more from the Baltimore City Health Department.
As you're doing that, I wanted to give a shout out to Paul Taylor.
Yes. Yes.
But I also want to give a shout out to Amanda. And let me just share with you why. So Amanda was in City Hall when I got there. She had traveled the world. She was an economic development person. She wanted to be in economic development, and she was doing communications. She was a loyal communications person working for me. And one day I was told that she shouldn't be in communications. They didn't say where she should be, but she shouldn't be here. And the conversation, I didn't hear all the conversation, but I walked in one day and something was about to happen that really shook me. And I always say you owe yourself the responsibility to be responsible. And I had a conversation with Amanda and I was just blown away about what she really wanted to do, where she wanted to be. And I picked up the phone and I had a conversation with Paul and I was talking to him about it. He said, Amanda, send her up here right away. But Amanda is just now hitting her stride because she's in a place where she makes a major contribution. And that's why I say to you all, especially as business owners and people who will employ other people, make sure as you are bringing people into your space that you allow them to grow. Because if you don't, they will. So give Amanda a big round of applause.
I have a quick story. I was going to shout out Amanda too. I'm an Amanda fan. And she was like, no, take that out. Don't say that. So I'm glad to see it happen. It's all right, Kristen. You can go ahead and just introduce yourself. Before we get, we have to move along. So if you can introduce yourself and then kind of start to tell us how inserting public health in this framework, right? And so how it's all about the quality of living and including the access to opportunity. If you can share the vision behind this from the health department.
Absolutely. So I'm Kristen Roskowski. I'm the Chief of Staff at the Baltimore City Health Department. I'm so honored to be here with Mayor Pugh and Shanti. This is such a great event. Thank you, Amanda. I'm here on behalf of Commissioner Wen and the 900 employees of the health department. So our vision for health in the city is, we protect health, we eliminate disparities, we go to where people are, and we engage the community in goal setting. So our strategic plan, Health of Baltimore 2020, is all about not just calling out health and what we can do to improve health in the city, but really eliminating and closing the gap on a number of disparities that we see. Whether it's in the priority areas of violence prevention, chronic disease, life course and core services, we're calling out kind of where these big picture areas where we can really move the needle. As the mayor mentioned, Healthy Babies has already been successful over the last 9 years in closing the gap between Black and white infant deaths over 60%. And we've decreased the teen birth rate by over 50%. So we've already seen a lot of success, and we don't want to just focus on where's the opportunity for improvement, such as the areas of addiction where we see over 25,000 of our residents who suffer from the disease of addiction. That's one of our biggest priority areas where we're really trying to to move the needle. And with the mayor's support, we've been able to launch a lot of new initiatives and get new funding to open up a stabilization center, to increase access to treatment, to get naloxone in the hands of all our residents, because we believe that everyone can save a life, and to also reduce stigma when it comes to addiction and mental health, so that people get access to treatment, seek it out, and don't kind of suffer in silence.
We just also got the award for the #1 health department in the country.
Why is it impossible to discuss health and well-being of Baltimore City residents without applying a lens of health equity and systematic disparities?
Sure. So, many of you might know, only 10% of what dictates our health actually it happens within the walls of the hospital. So it's all about where we live, where we work, where we play. So as I mentioned, our vision is to address a lot of these disparities. 1 in 4 African Americans lives in a food desert in our city. Our teen birth rates are pretty high, but as I said, we're moving the needle on that. So it's addressing the systemic racism and poverty that permeates, unfortunately, the city. But I know we're moving the needle on a lot of these areas, and so it's really addressing those disparities and calling out the inequities in the city.
Yeah. So she mentioned, sort of the social determinants, right? And so just to give clarity that you're right, 10% of our health is just about, physical, right? But the other piece, there's 40% of that that's based on where you live, the food you have access to, are there jobs available? So a lot of this work, when we talk about health and how it applies to economic development, it's really addressing those social determinants.
Yeah, but when we talk about jobs and job availabilities, part of it is getting folks healthy, because it's not a lack of jobs, it's the training, it's the mental health issues, it's the drug addiction issues. We have jobs that are available and training that's available. It's getting people prepared for those jobs. It's going to those corners, it's going into those communities, and it's lifting people beyond what they see. It's the same thing with our children. If we never take our children out of the 4 square block radius in which they live, they don't get to dream, they don't get to aspire, if they don't see doctors that look like them, if they don't see lawyers that look like them, if they don't see successful people who look like them, if they don't get an opportunity to go and run by someone who is successful that looks like them, they don't get to dream. And so if we're going to inspire them, then we have to expose them. And that lack of exposure keeps them from reaching beyond what they see.
Thank you. So at a high view, what are the depression, anxiety disorder costs?
Well, I know the World Health Organization calculates it at $1 trillion, but I think also the lack of productivity in our in the workforce if we're not healthy, we can't be productive. As the Mayor Q mentioned, our children can't see, they can't be successful in the classroom. So I think that's kind of the opportunity lost. But there's so much more that we can be doing.
So when you think about, for example, why does a child drop out of school? And I never forget, when I was in the state legislature, one of the main reasons I went to the state legislature was to move the compulsory attendance age to 18, to require that every child be educated, stay in school until they're 18. In some states, you could actually walk out at the age of 12. And back in the day, people were allowed to do that because they were going to the farm to work or down to the steel mill, whatever, to help, provide food for the family. Most states, the average age was around 16. And so can you imagine your 16-year-old as a responsible adult, not even saying anything to you because they don't have to, and can just walk out the door of the school, walk out of the school and say, I'm done. And this society has allowed children, because when we were growing up, if you were out of school, somebody was coming to get you. Somebody was calling your parent, you were going to be in school.
Right.
But So I went to the legislature because I wanted to move the compulsory attendance age to 18. Because I said, they can't go into service. What are you going to do at 16? Stand on the corner? I mean, you can't get a decent job at 16. So I went to the legislature and said, I got to move the compulsory attendance age to 18 because we have a responsibility to educate our children. I actually got the bill on the floor the first year in the Senate, and this was the response. Are you kidding? Did you, Finance, did you take a look at this? Budget, did you take a, this is a $50 million bill sitting on the floor of the Senate. Y'all about to pass that out. Well, it actually passed out, they killed it over in the House. So what I did, I was able to save my legislation. It said, State of Maryland, tell me what it would take to move the compulsory attendance age to 18. What are we missing here? So we did a study. And this is what the study said. You can't keep children in school till they're 18 because teachers come to school to teach. Y'all don't have an alternative system for children who are in trouble. We're talking about those who have lead pain issues. We're talking about mentally ill children. Y'all don't have any place to send them. So they let them walk out. And then it said, you are now, if a child wants to take a GED, they got to sit out of school 90 days before they can take a GED. Well, what are they going to do in 90 days?
Right.
I mean, these were the laws that were on the books. It took me 7 years. Wow. But I got it done. And each year, I took the study each year. Everything that the study said didn't exist. Oh, we don't have alternative schools? Require the state of Maryland. Put alternative schools in every jurisdiction in the state. Every jurisdiction. Deal with the children who have mental health issues. Deal with the children who are lead paint poison. Teach them because they are teachable, but you've got to teach them. And then I said, close the gap. If a child has the capacity to take the GED and pass it, then give it to them. And then I said, juxtapose the cost of dropping out of school, and this is where you get into society issue, the cost of dropping out of school to the cost of educating a child. Mm-hmm. It costs almost $40,000 to $80,000 a year to incarcerate a child, and you're spending less than $10,000 to $15,000 to educate our children. And so I say that because what ends up happening, if you're dropping out of school at 16, you're not prepared. You know, mental illness will become prevalent perhaps in your life. Drug addiction could also become another issue, and you could end up sleeping on the streets of our city because the jobs aren't there for a 16-year-old 24 hours a day, other than on the corners of our streets. And that's where we have a responsibility. Educate our children and see them as children. Just because a child is 6 feet tall doesn't make him a man. Just because a young lady dresses like she's 30 doesn't make her an adult. She's a child. Treat her as such. Those are some of the things that we got to continue to educate and share with those who have responsibilities in this society.
So I know we want to do questions. We said 10 minutes, but I think we are short for that. So I'm going to move forward. How do you want to do that? You want raise hands. And so if you have a question, do we have a microphone? Are we going to?
Oh, hello, my name is Morty Smith. I'm a business owner in Baltimore City. I'm also an advocate for missing children. One of the questions that you had stated was, one, what do we do with all of this information that we just gained and we just get ourselves involved, and people are always challenging themselves. What I definitely heard Shantae say is when we get a chance to speak more to our young adults, our children. My question is that now that we know and have so many resources, how can we impact in the schools without the large RFIs? And most of those ones that you have to submit, this big portfolio. Some people like myself, we just want to go in and speak 30 minutes and inspire a child to do more, introduce them to a life of an author or an advocate, teach them to advocate for themselves. If there's a black, brown check, some type of a form that we can come up with that can shortcut the process, allow people to come into the schools, there's a senior, a PTA parent, a owner of a business, or maybe 30 minutes for a lunch and learn, a chat and shoot. I'm often going to Dorchester County, Carroll County, but not in Baltimore City because there is no immediate process. We're not looking for a quick fix. We just want to spare 30 minutes of our time.
Well, let me just say there are ways in Baltimore City. There's so many ways. I created the Baltimore Design School, Fashion Architect and Design School.
Yes.
I also passed legislation in the state of Maryland to allow experts to come into the school system. So you all just need to know the system. The other thing is through our recreation centers. We have 42 recreation centers throughout the city of Baltimore. You can check with the head of recreation and parks. We have all kinds of programs that are going on in the city. We have a $12 million youth fund. And this year, the time has passed, but this is 3% of the city's budget goes to youth programs. That program right now is at $25 million because we didn't spend last year's money. But every year, it will be at least $12 million. And groups and organizations who have capacity and capability should be designing programs to meet the needs of our children. This is not a difficult process. You know, it is easy. There are all kinds of venues. The library has a system of working with young people. So there are all kinds of ways to get engaged in with our young people. Creating your own programs and addressing them is not that difficult. And it's not difficult. See, the school systems now, each school is controlled by the principal. Principals love relationships with the public. I tell people, what is the difference in the Baltimore School for the Arts, the Baltimore Design School, Green Street Academy, and some others in our city? Most of them have what we call boards of directors, people who care about what's going on in those schools. Every school in this city should have a group of people who care about what's going on in that specific school. There's an organization called, what's it, Promise, it's just for young people. What is it called? No, not Promise Sites, but there's a Baltimore's Promise, who is working independently with our various schools on different programs for the school system. There are lots of ways to get into the school system, but you can contact your principals directly.
Thank you so much.
My name is Keisha Doherty. I recently resigned from the Grammys run by a nonprofit Creative Nomads full time. And I wanted to actually just say thank you because one of our biggest partners is the Judy Center. So we bring access to arts, music, and culture to them. But then also, like you said, the Baltimore Children and Youth Fund, we just applied for a grant for that.
Great.
And then you have money from the health department that's going to ACES and dealing with West Baltimore. So there's a lot of things that are happening in the city that people may not see. But as a nonprofit that is new and that's been doing this for 3 years, we really just appreciate the money that's coming in to be able to help the citizens and help nonprofits, especially ones who have been in the city doing things with our neighborhoods, to be able to have the opportunity to get those funds to do more. So thank you.
Thank you. And don't forget the Family League. I created a call to action group when I first became mayor back in 2017, January 2017. I said to the community, I can't do this work by myself. I need you all to jump in and help me. And there are about 50 groups who come to City Hall twice a month. And at that group, and then I invited some philanthropic people to come in. And one philanthropic organization was so impressed by the group that they gave us $500,000 to help build those groups. And I think there's one of them I know at least is here who's doing some work with young ladies. And so they are getting grants. But there are all kinds of granting programs in the city. We give away we invest $2.4 million a city in youth programs every year. We had 16,500 young people who applied to go to work this summer. And of the 16,500, 12,000 of them actually completed the process. 9,000 of them got jobs. We're still trying to find jobs for others. But that was raising almost $15 to $20 million for them. And then we have Be More Beautiful program for our young people who, as some young man said to me at the age of 14, I need to work. So on Saturdays at $10 an hour for 4 hours on Saturdays, they clean up lots around the city. There's so much going on in the city that people just don't know about. And as I said to you all, sometimes it's hard to get above the noise of the negativity. And that's why every chance I get, whenever I start a conversation, violence is going down in the city, down by 20%. Steadily progress. $30 million came into the city. People talk about disadvantaged administration, the city not being able to get money. We were one of the promised neighborhoods in the country. We competed with cities all around the nation. We got in the top 20, we got in the top 6, and now we're among the 5. We got $30 million from HUD to invest in Baltimore.
Hi, my name is Rosemary. I am an employer in the state of Maryland and have been for the last 12 years. My question goes to the mayor because I have a concern because when I try to hire young men and women and they have gone for training and they are certified, only to find that at the end of the road when I send them for a background, they cannot pass a background and maybe they committed just something so minor and now it's making them not get fired. Find a very good employee here that can work, willing to work, but the background is holding them that you cannot hire them.
You can hire them.
Because the law that
You can hire them.
I feel frustrated when I try to use these workers, but I cannot hire them because my hands are tied by the law.
Can I answer your question? Okay. First of all, you can go to Office of Employment Development, you can work with Jason Perkins Cohen. 2, you can hire them. You know, we know there are folks who have background issues, and in some jobs you can't hire, but in some positions you can hire. We in the city of Baltimore lead by example. There are people that we hire who have background issues. We also have an organization that works with helping people who have felonies, for example, to get some assistance. You know, other folks need additional training. We make Baltimore City Community College free because we recognize that there's some young people that and so we thought we would get maybe 200, maybe 250, 545. And so we're excited about that work. It is difficult. We have 10,000 folks who come back to the city every year from the institutions, felons, ex-offenders, and they need our help. So we are working with some employers to help them. But it is difficult sometimes when people have backgrounds that are difficult. But the reality is if we don't help them, they end up on our streets, on our corners, and with issues. There are several programs. We created in our office the African American Male Initiative because we recognize this as an issue and a problem in our city. And so we're working with a number of organizations to assist people who have background issues.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, let me just say about this wonderful woman. I met her 8 years ago when she was at the Office of Park Service. We sat there, she walked in off the street asking for her help. She sat there, we talked about everything that's happening right now. Everything that's happening right now, when she was at the Senate, this was a conversation. And to see that you're doing this after that conversation is amazing. And I appreciate you and everybody. When I look around the room, I see everybody is so proud to have you as their mayor.
Yes.
To this city, because Baltimore is a great city. And I just want to bring a couple of things to the forefront to kind of wrap some of the comments and the statements that was up front about mental health and education. Madam Mayor may know me from working with the youth at the Baltimore City Public Schools, but I'm also a mental health professional as well. There's 4 things that we're missing in the mental health field as far as professionals and people working with the mental health community. More preventative planning. That's what we need, more preventative planning. Secondly, we have, what I like to do and include is emotional intelligence. We don't have emotional intelligence included in our curriculum. Right. We don't have emotional intelligence for individuals. So another thing I want to bring to the forefront is desensitization. We are so desensitized, or have become so desensitized to our youth and our young people. It is almost, it's sad. When I do my professional development for Baltimore City Public Schools, I have an opener. I played a sound bite from, I played a video from 9/11. You've seen it 1,000 times, 100 times. Everybody's on their phone, looking at their paperwork. I turn all the lights off in the library, it's pitch black, play the audio. By the time I turn that light back on, 2 or 3 people were in there crying because they had to imagine what was going on. They had to believe, they had to feel that, they had to hear that and put it in perspective. So what I'm saying, we're missing that part of being desensitized, preventative planning, and we need to have more emotional intelligence included into our curriculum and dealing with our people in the professional that have mental health issues. So I just want to say that. Thank you so much, Madam Mayor. I love you. I think all of us in here love you and appreciate you so much.
We're close to the end of our first panel. I don't know, Madam Mayor, you have shared so much, and I just agree in my sentiments of thanking you. I'm honored to be sitting here and to have moderated this conversation. I wanted to give Shanti a real quick second. I think you have a couple of closing.
Yeah, I just want to say, please follow our movement at Silence to Shame on Instagram. We are at Silence TH Shame on Facebook. We post a lot of helpful information, guys, on Instagram and Facebook. Also, check out our podcasts on iTunes, Google Play, and SoundCloud. And I have a book coming out. It's a short story book called Silencing My Shame, where I talk about my journey. And I'll make myself available during lunch if anyone has any questions for us and the work that we're doing. And the gentleman that just talked about doing more, I'd love to talk to you about some of the curriculum that we're building out, and maybe we could hopefully partner one day.
So let me just say, thank you for the comment. Thank you also for being a part of the call to action group. He's one of the individuals that's there twice a month at City Hall, making sure that we continue to meet the needs of the people in our city. And it really is about collaboration and cooperation and working together and understanding that when we lift the least with the dog, but more importantly, when we work together and focus, and that mental illness is truly an issue that we have a responsibility, and we should never be silent to what's happening in our communities and our neighborhoods. We all have a role. We can play a role. So thank you all for joining on this effort.